Hi everyone, Clearphony Throat Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Bladee album, Red Light. Bladee is a Swedish auto crooner and Drain Gang member, coming up off that whole young lean wave, fusing together elements of trap music, alternative R&B, cloud rap. He has a few releases under his belt so far, though nothing has really stood out to me, stopped me in my tracks as... I don't know. I guess there wasn't really anything that struck me as being too unique about his sound. In my cursory listens of his debut record, the collaborative record that followed that not too long after. But whenever he does manage to drop something, I do get a lot of requests. My morbid curiosity starts itching at me, and I guess this time it sort of got the better of me. So I've been listening to this new album back to front, and I'm just like... what? This is awful. What is the selling point of this? The only thing good about this record is the vaguely futuristic and dreamy production, which is not that dynamic, it's not that versatile, it's all across the entire LP, so you're kind of getting just one dimension here. So even if I do enjoy the aesthetic of these beats for a few tracks, it does tend to wear thin by the end of the project. But still, if this album were an instrumental record, in my opinion, it would be so much better. I mean, the very bright, futuristic, and carefree trap beats on this thing are pretty blissful, sounding like a cross between like a Denzel Curry instrumental and some vaporwave Bandcamp. But Bladee himself on this record is absolutely intolerable. He sounds almost as lifeless, tuneless, flavorless, and one-dimensional as Nav. The singing on this album, if you could call it that, sounds near tone-deaf. And there's really nothing in terms of like an interesting emotional display or like inflection or vocal virtuosity. It's just kind of a really awkward, awful young boy voice moaning away with just like a lot of auto-tune slathered on top. And for a guy who sings for pretty much the entirety of this album, I don't really get the sense that he cares all that much about melody, as pretty much all of the drivel that pours out of this dude's mouth across this project just sounds really thoughtless and off the cuff. I've really only heard a few projects, a few artists who are at this visibility level who are so beyond the help that autotune can provide. For sure, Bladee mostly abuses it for its aesthetic purposes, not necessarily to fix the pitch of his voice. But there are so many vocal and melodic blemishes all over the performances on this thing that the autotune just cannot cover it up. In fact, it makes it sound almost worse. Throwing the autotune on his voice is kind of like, I don't know, having a scope but not a gun to put it on. Or you just bought a fresh set of guitar strings, but you don't have a guitar. I mean, Bladee is consistently outshined by his guest singers on this project, and they're not even really that much better than he is. And it's not just how little effort it sounds like Bladee is putting into these tracks, it's also that some of them are kind of painful to listen to. The song Golden Boy is kind of a prime example. The vocal mixing is a little off, the instrumental is much more quieter than the singing, which when layered gets really loud and starts to clip a little bit. Honestly, on a few of the tracks here, the mixing and the mastering is trash. I mean, I guess this album does have a certain awkward European who sits around all day getting high with his friends and consuming American media through the internet appeal to it. So I'm sure some people will be able to relate to the attitude or the vibe of the album. But if you're the kind of listener who actually goes into a song or a record looking to hear some decent mixing or a cool beat or some good singing or a song or, I don't know, funny or entertaining or interesting lyrics, a versatile track list, a unique, bright personality, yeah, this album's probably not for you. I haven't even really talked about the lyrics yet, and I'm not going to go too deep into them other than just to say that they're generally goofy as fuck, which is clearly intentional, but it's not really adding to the quality or the character to the album. It only makes me feel stronger, in my opinion, that the whole record just kind of sounds like an extended piss take. However, I don't think there's a lick of irony to what's happening on this thing. I will commend Bladee on one thing with this record, though. This album and his sound in general would be nearly impossible to parody, because you can't really take this into a humorous direction. Like, you can't make the vocal sound worse, you can't make the beats sound more rickety. There's literally no way to tease a funny moment out of it by making a worse sounding version. Again, I thought the guest singers on here were kind of tolerable, and the aesthetic of the instrumentals were pretty cool for at least the first few tracks. But outside of that, God, this album is just a barren wasteland to me, as far as trying to find something of entertainment value. I'm feeling a light to decent 1 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Just leave an angry comment in the comments if you're feeling angry. Anthony Fantano, Bladee, Red Light, forever.